My name's Matt Grimshaw. I'm a British transplant living in California, an adventure enthusiast,
Barley's just bonkers.
and an aspiring filmmaker with a hopeless addiction to documentaries.
Bloody hell.
In part 1, I was invited by the Silicon Valley exotic car club called 100 Octane to film their annual experience tour. 4 days of exotic car madness with millions of dollars of the most lust-worthy automotive artwork in the world. And we'd already driven across the entire San Francisco Bay Area before crossing the Sierra Nevada mountains via Tioga Pass, stopping at Mammoth Lakes for the first night's rest. Well, at least that's what the club members were doing, because they were all at a Scotch tasting event.
My one that's going in there. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Macallan Ice Ball Machine. I put it in my Macallan Sherry Oak 18, so enjoy your final Scotch. I have 3 left if anyone would like one.
I was busy trying to fix a dead memory card, as I was just along for the ride. As the sun arose on the second glorious day, I left behind all thoughts of just how much I hated yesterday's dead memory card and instead looked forward to a potential day filled with a certain yellow Ferrari, which was still the proud owner of its original front splitter due to my diligent observations the day before.
Whoa, 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 front splitter.
I hoped that my actions would leave me in the good graces of the extremely friendly owner. But all of those illusions were shattered when I discovered that the Ferrari that's so cool is actually called Ferrari twice had left to return to the Bay Area. It was a crushing blow. The opportunity to take a seat in one of the world's most amazing vehicles had passed me by. And look, I know just how this sounds. It's not like there wasn't enough exotic metals still with us on the trip. But that Ferrari had stirred something deep within me, something no Ferrari had touched since the F40, or indeed the 288 GTO, my personal all-time favourite Ferrari to drool over. Maybe it's because I'd been staring at it for altogether far too long the previous day. Maybe it was something simpler. Perhaps I'd just fallen in love with a bright yellow Ferrari. Either way, the LaFerrari wasn't coming with us to Vegas, and I for one was going to miss seeing its searing yellow paint and hearing its sonorous V12 soundtrack. It was while I was pondering on these thoughts that all of the best rides got taken. The end result of my daydreaming is I got relegated out of the 100 Octane Club. Well, not exactly. I was going to be riding with Kieron, the Macallan ambassador from last night's Scotch pairing event. He was tagging along to meet a friend in Vegas, so I'd have to wait until the end of leg 1 in order to swap into a supercar, if I could find a seat.
So today wide open roads. 395 is a lot of fun. It's two lane each way. Redwood trees everywhere. It's beautiful. The route today is awesome. As I said, the redwood trees, then we'll get to Lone Pine. Usually we make a left and we go through Death Valley. This time we're gonna make a right, go up to Mount Whitney Portal Road, I think it's called. Then we're coming back down. At the very bottom is Lone Pine. There's a few restaurants. We'll do the same thing we did yesterday, lunchtime. Pick your poison, probably American fare, and yeah.
And on to Vegas.
And just like that, my morning had gone from the fantasy of riding shotgun in a Ferrari to the reality of a BMW 428 Coupe driven by someone born a few hundred miles north of my own hometown. From the moment I met him, I really liked Kieran. He was genuinely a nice bloke, and my biggest regret of the trip was not recording more of our conversations. He also helped explain the nagging feeling in my head that he was vaguely familiar.
I'm a TV and radio presenter.
Oh wow, cool.
Voiceover artist, stand-up comedian, actor. I was on the BBC doing the voiceovers for 3 years.
Do you know what? I've been thinking since I met you that your voice is very, very familiar.
My one fear was if his steed had enough under the bonnet to keep up with this crowd. And that's no slight to either Kieran or his assassin spec BMW Coupe. But after filming this crew for a whole day, my mind had mentally readjusted to their insane capabilities. The fact is, unless you could get to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds, you were going to be left behind. Even the slowest 100 octane car, the Red M3 convertible, still had well over 400 horsepower from its 4-litre V8 to cool on. When you're rolling in a large group of supercars flying in formation like this, normal road vehicles seem slow. And with the group average horsepower being somewhere pretty far north of 550, it's like a convoy of Greek gods amongst the mere mortals of regular traffic. It's almost an aura generated by this much horsepower that creates a ripple effect that results in traffic tending towards the get out of the way variety. It really is just like having some kind of a superpower. But whatever it is, a stealth BMW doesn't have it. And that was Kieran's main challenge. People would move out of the way for a Ferrari, but not for his black BMW. and as a result, every now and then we started to lose sight of our part of the pack. The Sierra Nevada is a huge mountain range spanning the bulk of the state of California, and it's home to some pretty amazing stuff, just like Yosemite, which we'd gone through the day before, and our next destination, the base of Mount Whitney. But what's always struck me about every visit I've ever had to any part of the Sierra Nevada mountains is their abrupt nature on their eastern side. On the western approach, you get rolling foothills which slowly give way to the vast central valley. But not on the eastern side. This makes them spectacular to view from a distance. However, building a road up and across mountains such as these comes with a twist. Well, actually, quite a few of them. Because they're mostly technical twisty switchback type roads cut into the mountainside, which are great fun to drive on, but which aren't so much fun to be a passenger in. Not when you can see just how far down it is to the valley below. But before we faced this final stretch to the Whitney portal, we'd lost the pack in a town and thought we might have missed the turn to the Whitney portal itself, only to find that we hadn't. Instead, somehow we'd managed to fall to the very back of the tour.
I'm not seeing anyone.
Yeah.
Because I know the McLaren was in that back group, wasn't it, Texture?
Yeah, the McLaren and one of the Rolls.
Yeah, the blue Rolls is the sweeper, right? That's Jamie.
We were even a few miles behind the blue Rolls-Royce Wraith that acted as the sweeper car, there to pick up the loose stragglers.
Oh, easy, Tiger. Oops.
I sensed that this did not sit too well with my Scottish pilot, and even though I knew that the 100 octane experience wasn't a race, I decided I'd better not lean out of the car anymore. Whitney Portal stands at 8,360 feet above sea level, but is only a gateway to a much higher peak, Mount Whitney. Mount Whitney is an impressive view indeed, and like much of America, it's got an equally confusing past. The mountain rises to 14,505 feet above sea level and is inexorably linked to the foundation of the United States Geological Survey, being named as it is for the benefactor of the mission that discovered it, the Californian state geologist Josiah Whitney, back in July 1864. Now, of course, when I say discovered, I mean by the new government of the country. The local native peoples, the Paiute, already knew it was there, and they had already named it Tumaniguya, which translates roughly to the very old man. However, we know it today as Mount Whitney, which has a confusing story behind it. You see, it's named for a man that never climbed it. Even the geological team he funded can't claim first ascent due to some mildly comic turns. During the survey that stumbled into the massive peak, a geologist named Clarence King, who was himself the first director of the newly formed United States Geological Survey, attempted to summit the mountain from the west side, but had to stop short of the peak. In 1871, King returned to finish the job, but in taking a different route in poor weather conditions, he actually got turned around and summited the nearby Mount Langley instead. Upon learning of his mistake, he attempted and succeeded making it to the summit of Mount Whitney in August 1873, only to find that he'd actually been beaten to the punch by 3 locals who were taking a fishing trip a month before, naming it Fisherman's Peak along the way. The 3 men were locals Charles Bagole, Albert H. Johnson and John J. Lucas from the nearby town of Lone Pine. Despite the locals being the first to actually make it to the peak, they still didn't get to name it. In 1891, the United States Geological Survey decided to only recognise Mount Whitney as the name of the mountain, proving that if you want to name a mountain, it really helps if you're in charge of all of the maps. Today, Mount Whitney is of course part of the National Park system, but due to its popularity, these days a permit is required in order to climb to the top. In fact, it wasn't the US parks that opened the trail to the top for regular hikers. In 1904, a packhorse trail, much of which is still in use today, was engineered and completed by a Lone Pine resident named Gustav F. Marsh, and it was funded by the town of Lone Pine, where we were headed next.
See, I'll go at the sunroof, but not if you're going to go as fast as you were around them corners.
You don't go as fast going downhill. You don't have anywhere near as much control.
Look at that. The bike here landed so hard it scratched it. Yeah, it looks like.
Lone Pine is what the United States Census Bureau calls a frontier town, with about 2,000 residents. It's more of a natural trading post than a gold rush town like Columbia. The trade routes across the mountains were long established between the local inhabitants, the Paiute, and those to the west, the Chumash peoples of the Central Valleys and coastal regions. Lone Pine began as a lone cabin built in the winter of 1861 to 1862, but which rapidly developed over the next few years until in 1870 a post office was registered, placing the town officially on the map.
Shaking too much from the exertion of holding on there.
Yeah.
Around those corners it was tough.
During lunch, Ben Moore approached me to see if I'd like a ride with Valentino. But transferring all my gear from the spacious BMW to the hilariously confined, if surprisingly comfortable GELATO, was a struggle, one that saw my tripod and a few other bits and bobs get left behind with Kieran. It took me about 10 minutes just to remember to breathe, and then another 10 to remember to start filming.
How long has it been since you retired?
2008.
2008. So you've so a while, 9 years. But you still keep busy with cars.
Yes.
What do you do now? Just this sort of thing?
Restoration.
Restoration.
EVA
What sort of cars do you restore? Lamborghinis, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Miura, Countach,
Wow.
400 GT, 350 GT, cars of my time.
So how did you become Lamborghini's test driver? I've always been curious about that story.
Well, you know, honestly, I still don't know. I was a mechanic apprentice, and at a certain time, you know, the company needed to train young test driver. So they said to me, we need to train 2 young test drivers. Would you like to do, since you love so much testing car and driving car? And this is how it practically started.
So what was the what did they ask you to look for in chassis development?
A test driver has to check everything, you know. Well, let's say a test driver is, there are 2 very different things. One is a production test driver, and one is a development test driver.
Okay.
A production test driver has to make sure that everything is okay. A development test driver, you know, has to develop a car from the beginning. I mean, he has to take the car out on the road first time, when the car is first time on 4 wheels, and be let's say a connection, a link between the engineers and the product and the car.
What do you have a favorite of the 2?
Well, you know, for a test driver, becoming a development test driver is like a priest becoming pope, you know. is the maximum you can have.
Right.
Because when you know, they called me and they said, now we have to develop a car, and you are designed to develop a car, to test a car. You know, this is a day that we will never forget.
Did you ever get to meet Ferruccio?
Oh yes.
Yeah?
Oh yes.
The first time I heard the story of Lamborghini and versus Ferrari, and the tractor manufacturer wanted to make better than the legend of Ferrari, I just fell in love with the story.
Well, this apparently is what happened, you know, what's really happened. Because Ferruccio Lamborghini bought 2 Ferrari for himself and for his wife. And, you know, he was complaining because, you know, there was always something wrong with the transmission or with, he didn't like. And Ferruccio, with a lot of respect, was never a huge driver, you know.
Right.
He was an industrial mind, you know. So, you know, he met Enzo Ferrari and they started to fight. And this is when he said, I will do my own sport car and show you how to make sport car, so you can learn from me. Enzo Ferrari told him, you are a farmer and you are a tractor driver, so don't complain driving my beautiful cars. You know, like 2 kids, that's 2 kids fighting, you know.
Man, hardly anyone knows what it is anymore.
Mamma mia, beautiful body, amazing.
See how smooth it is. I think it's funny for the average person to understand how you can be a test driver for Lamborghini for 40 years and still, because that's your job, most people hate their jobs, right?
No.
And you still have the passion for the road.
Say I was lucky to be in the right place in the right moment, and you know, it's so much rewarding what we are doing every day, still today after 40 years, that I will never quit doing that, you know. I mean, not for my decision, maybe somebody else's decision, but not mine.
It's fantastic.
Oh, it's so beautiful place.
Hot wind.
Padre Crowley Point is named for an Irish immigrant Catholic priest and local legend, the Padre of the Desert, Father John J. Crowley. Father Crowley was an activist and friend of all in the Owens Valley, and surprisingly enough, an avid tourism advocate. You see, Owens Valley had originally thrived as an agricultural centre right up until the end of the 19th century. That was until the infamous water wars of the early 20th century that still continue to this day. Basically, the city of Los Angeles, through a series of very nefarious moves, stole all the water. Tactics ranged from blocking local projects that needed water through political pressure, to posing as ranchers in order to buy the land from Owens Valley residents. The campaign was so effective that by 1928, 90% of all the water from Owens Valley was owned by Los Angeles and was being redirected and pumped south to feed the needs of the exploding megacity. The side effect was the devastation of the Owens Valley agricultural business. The Padre became an advocate of tourism and travel as a means to help the towns of the Owens Valley recover, using its natural location next to America's highest point, Mount Whitney, and its lowest, Death Valley, as natural attractions. He was known throughout the valley and deserts as someone who fought for and aided all of the people of the Owens Valley, regardless of religion and background. Sadly, Father Crowley died in 1940 while driving his ancient Model T Ford along State Route 14 in the high desert. He was only 49 years old, but by that time had made such a deep impact on the area that memorials to him can be found all over. Despite the amazing views, we weren't stopping long because temperatures were rising fast. It was already well over 105 Fahrenheit and our next break was in the heart of Death Valley.
Hotter than hell here. So hot. So very hot. It's like 126, 127 degrees. I could feel my skin scorching, wanting to fall off my body. It's ridiculous. And these guys are going to walk in the desert.
The heat in Death Valley was tortuous, in more ways than one. A poorly timed overtaking manoeuvre got a club member the only ticket of the entire 4-day tour.
There's the rest of the crew. And there's Copper.
But I was having other issues. None of my action cameras could take the heat. So for the rest of the journey to Vegas, I was going to have to steady a camera against the G-forces generated by one of the best wheelmen in the business.
Alright, are we ready to go?
No. Yeah, Valentino. I think Ted's out there with Ted or something.
Is that them down there?
Yeah, Ted's out that way. I recognise the red shoes. I think. Do you need juice?
I'll take it. I'm okay.
Yeah. Gasoline?
Good. 3/4.
3/4. We'll make it to Vegas. Yeah. Wow, what a ride that was. Woo. You were booking, man. I just thought you took off. Well, I'll ride with you on the way back or whenever you get a chance. I'd love to sit down and interview with you. Yeah. But I'm just literally talking to people about their rides, about how they got into cars. And we talked to Balboni about how he became Lamborghini's test driver. It was great. You know?
Pushing cars into the warehouse.
Yeah.
That's how he did it.
It's great.
I've known Val since I was 20.
Oh.
So
this is a lifelong dream for me. I've known him, I'm 41, I've known him pretty much my entire life of him. And so sitting in the car, I'm kind of pinching myself every now and then, you know?
I bet.
Vegas parking lot. Is the reception crew? Yep, I think we're valeting.
Hey, I'm trying to get
That's not mine. I've got some potential stuff in the rolls. And do we know what happened to Kieran? I know he's at the Hard Rock.
That might be Marcus's, no?
But he's got another bag with
Coming up on day 3, I find out what it's like to be eaten by a Rolls Royce, riding with Jamie in the sweeper car,
100 octane experience, a tour of gas stations.
and we grab a few drinks with the Hollywood jet set in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, I know, they're born to drift. They're perfect.
Let's just break it down to you and me uptown, dancing all around till the disco ball pops. But I have to be me, and everyone can see your anger is misplaced. And I'm gonna tell ya, don't hate me 'cause I get attention. Don't turn me into what I'm not. I have to be me 24/7, and I ain't never gonna stop. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Oh, no, no, no. No, oh, oh, oh. And I ain't never gonna stop.